Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on this webinar as we cover how you can use space utilization data to really drive your workplace strategies. Now, we have a large audience today, and I know this is a highly topical area that really resonates with everyone in the room. So in today's session, we'll be covering why monitoring utilization data can help you strike a balance between your real estate cost, employee productivity, and future-proof your workplace strategies. We'll also give you some techniques on how you can translate that data into tangible solutions and demonstrate how you can actually add value to your business objectives and goals. You can ask questions during the broadcast using a question panel at the bottom of your screen, and we'll cover these at the end of the session. Now, today we're joined by Yulia Park, our workplace strategy lead at OpenSensors. Yulia has over a decade of experience working in international corporate real estate and workplace consultation. She's worked for leading firms including JLL and Colliers International, as well as holds a MSc Real Estate Management degree and RICS membership. Yulia has recently completed her MA Cultural Management program to really be able to better support our customers in their change management projects. Now, without much further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Yulia. So let's jump straight in.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today. Workplace and workspace strategies is an incredibly broad area, and there are numerous ways the data can support and inform your planning and management. So for this short webinar today, I would just like to focus on specific tangible space and cost optimization opportunities that you can identify and of course realize with a little help of visualization data. But first of all, I would just like to give a very little background, just remind you of how data, including data on how users interact and utilize the space and also interact with each other, is fast becoming one of the key enablers for strategic and also for tactical decision making in our industry in corporate real estate and facility management. So I guess it's very obvious to everyone in the industry, including of course yourselves, that the data is really shaping our real estate landscape globally. But the thing is that corporate real estate happens to be one of the areas of our industry where this impact has been the most profound. So this transformation in the industry are brought about by three large groups. So the first group is business drivers, such as real estate cost optimization and enormous pressure on real estate cost reduction, especially in expensive locations like, say, London or Hong Kong. Also, there is rising real estate costs, which I just mentioned, and growing competition for top talents, basically in every marketplace. Another group of factors is a change in people and culture. So emerging workplace models such as agile working and activity-based working basically completely transform the industry and how we see the space, as well as relationship between the space, people, and the technology. And also all these changes, this flexible working and casualization of work are propelled by ever increasing mobility and digital technologies, including cloud technology, which is now, of course, ubiquitous. So it all results in a growing need for more data and, of course, better high quality data that can help companies and real estate professionals navigate this complex landscape. So just to give you an idea of the size of the market for just office occupancy analytics alone, it was estimated to be 1.5 billion just 2 years ago, and it's set to grow to 4.5 billion US dollars in just 3 years from now. This is pretty impressive growth. So it can only mean one thing. And the thing is that asset management, workplace, and portfolio planning professionals increasingly rely on the data and increasingly learn to embrace data in their work and use it as a foundation for decision making on a daily basis. So how exactly data supports workplace planning and management? It's really right now about people and work and technology and workspace, and the data needs to be placed at the very core of it. So putting the data at the center of this relationship is a major element, addresses a lot of strategic areas of corporate real estate and facility management, such as workplace change or helping you design workplace change around work and collaboration patterns that are specific to your organization, not just some generic design guidelines or some cookie cutters design. Indisputable and objective data also can help you support your business cases and help support your conversations with business stakeholders such as department heads or HR, which we know can be quite uneasy sometimes, especially when it comes to transition to alternative work settings such as activity-based working and reducing number of desks. Also, leveraging the data can help the industry professionals keep up with the growing trend on human-centric design, which is basically designing the space around people and around employees and making it not just productive space, but also engaging space and the space where with like that feel-good factors. It can improve wellness, productivity, and engagement in the organization. Having said that, I really do believe that quantitative utilization data needs to be viewed in conjunction with the qualitative insights, such as the ones gathered through interviews or workshops with employees or change management sessions and surveys, where you'll be able to gather information about and kind of insights around how people really feel about the space and what are the key enablers and what are the key inhibitors there. So let's look at what data we're after, what data we gather, and most importantly, how is this relevant to workspace metrics and standards and also designs that can be derived from this data analysis. We collect very straightforward data, such as average and peak utilization rates, and then when this peak occurs across key types of space. So the key targets are usually, of course, desks, meeting rooms, sometimes private offices, also open and circulation areas. We had a number of requests to measure utilization and kind of traffic in areas such as parking lots, counters near the elevators, so building managers know exactly how many people are in and out of the building. So the data is fairly straightforward and simple. Workplace performance can be also monitored and analyzed on a single office level, or also like down to single desk or single department, but can also be viewed on the level of entire corporate real estate portfolio, even globally, which will of course result in a very different kind of perspective and different granularity of the data. Some of the workspace metrics and strategic design inputs that also I'm sure I'm very familiar to everyone on that webinar can and really should be developed and reviewed based on utilization data. And first of all, of course, it's workplace density, both static density and dynamic density, which all really evolves along with the organization, it changes all the time. That makes it a really challenging thing to tackle and manage. Desk sharing ratios that can be customized by departments or teams. Number of enclosed, shared or private offices, in case you still have some in your office. Not everyone has these days. Alternative work settings, designs for activity-based working, which also informed and designed around the utilization data, and of course meeting rooms number and meeting room sizes. So the two key conditions that really make it possible to move from space performance metrics to understanding and kind of figuring out workplace performance guidelines or standards for your particular organization are basically just two things. So the first is monitoring needs to be consistent and it needs to be continuous. So you have thorough kind of data set that is reliable, and you can be sure that your data is really representative of whatever patterns you observe in your space. And the second key enabler is powerful and preferably intuitive and simple to use analytics platform, which really allow you to process the data and trends and visualize it and present it to kind of the C-suite even, especially when you work on portfolio level.
We do have a question that's come in related to data, and I think it would be a good time to ask this now whilst we're on the topic. And the question is, how long does it take before you can see trends in your data?
Well, this is a good question. I did not mention it yet in the presentation, but we would suggest, as we do suggest to our clients, to gather at least 10 to 12 weeks worth of data to start spotting and kind of mapping out key opportunities and key patterns of space usage, of space performance. And of course, yeah, I mean, now we're in June, and of course we really advise you against relying upon the data gathered in July, August, or even December. But the general rule is that the larger the space or portfolio is, the more time you would probably would want to have to gather and aggregate the data, just to be sure that you work with the realistic assumptions.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully I answered that. So let's move on. Just probably could be a good place to start speaking about that here. Coming from corporate real estate background and having worked with quite a few private and public sector occupiers, I know that one of the most critical and sometimes often almost always challenging parts of embracing data-driven solutions is not really gathering the data, but learning what to do with them. Basically understanding how this data can be translated into tangible outputs, solutions, and strategies. However, in order to even start gathering high quality data, that of course needs to be also relevant, we need to think about the setup for our occupancy monitoring. And this is where I'd like to start discussing concrete techniques and concrete strategies. It's just a simple and can really look like a very obvious and small thing, but at OpenSensors, we believe that getting sensors taken right is critical for subsequent data analysis. So basically at the point of installing the sensors and setting up the analytical dashboard for our clients, we tag or label each sensor with the properties or attributes or labels to list different properties that this particular space or asset has. So for example, for desks, the most common ways to label or to tag, and of course later to view the data, is by building, by floor, by department or team or neighborhood or village or whatever they call it in your organization. However, we can add more text to each of the workstations if we work on a portfolio level. So for example, country, city, or even region like North America. So there is numerous ways to tag meeting rooms too, and the meeting rooms, of course, is the second largest category of space we usually work with. Meeting rooms can be tagged by obviously location, again, building, floor, country, also according to their capacity, as well as is it like bookable or not bookable, or formal or informal space, and also by availability of technology like screens, etc. But yeah, simple again as it may sound, the right tagging enables search and aggregation by different parameters, which really turns these very simple functions into powerful tools of data presentation and analysis. And just by filtering the assets by location, for example, you can have a great visibility into how different parts of your corporate real estate portfolio perform and how they compare with each other, how they compare with other assets within your portfolio, and also how you can benchmark them against industry standards or the ways other organizations in your sector perform. It's also important that tagging needs to be really specific to the questions that you want the data to answer. So a first example here that I wanted to walk you through is meeting rooms. And surprisingly, meeting rooms, phone booth, and other types of collaborative spaces actually make up to 40% of net leasable area, believe it or not, which alone make them a very obvious target for rightsizing, or at least for monitoring. There are also almost always a room for improvement in the ways meeting room utilization is managed and monitored. Also, again, there are quite a few common issues and problems with meeting rooms and other types of bookable collaborative space that perhaps are very familiar to all of you. The first issue is that most of the time, the size of meetings are really below 70% of meeting room capacity, and usually it's not even 50%. So for example, seeing like 2 or 3 people having a long meeting in a large 12-person capacity room is a very common sign, I think, like across different industries. Our data, for example, show that most face-to-face meetings or like physical, that the meetings where physical presence is required happens between 2 to 4 people. And with the advance of collaboration technologies, everyone else just dials in, right? And I think this trend will only exaggerate in the future. So by installing sensors and counters in meeting space and analyzing the resulting utilization data, we can see how often and how many people actually use the rooms. And that will allow us to quantify meeting rooms requirements and address this mismatch between the size and the actual size of the meeting. This is exactly, by the way, what Microsoft has done early that year as a part of the Intelligent Workplace global program. It's Intelligent Workplace is the name of the workplace program, which leveraged data and analytics gathered through their own cloud solutions, Azure. In particular, having the insights about how many people were using different rooms at any given time, help them make informed decisions how they size these meeting rooms. So this screenshot on the right is actually from the article published just this month by Microsoft Real Estate Portfolio Director, which also exemplify the mismatch that Microsoft observed in their own offices. And this real estate director also cited overall workplace optimization by 40% in Microsoft Amsterdam office and 60% in Brussels, which was achieved partially by using sensors, analytical platforms, and of course, meeting rooms optimization and rightsizing was one of the key contributors there. So this is a forecasting tool that analyzes multiple data points around rooms usage and provides recommendations on the number of rooms for each given capacity. Essentially, this data helps us, again, quantify how many meeting rooms we need and what capacity they need to be in order for us to start kind of better balancing cost of office space with productivity. And second example here also relates to meeting rooms. Second, the most common issue with the meeting space and other types of collaboration space is that they basically always booked, but people just don't show up for the meetings. With the lack of visibility into office space utilization, real estate managers can actually have incorrect perceptions about space usage just by looking at, for example, your organization's meeting room booking system, and you will see that our meeting rooms are overutilized, which in fact is not very accurate. That's why the sensors really help to address this and help you adjust your assumptions about meeting rooms utilization. There is also a number of data-driven solutions to improve meeting rooms utilization management. Things like automated utilization monitoring can help here too, by providing access to real-time view of meeting room availability and actual utilization at any given time. So meeting rooms and also desks can become a really space on demand. And this is, I think, the direction where many organizations are moving at the moment. Real-time meeting rooms availability displays can just be put near the reception or by the elevator, so the employees can kind of easier navigate the space and have their meetings where they need it and when they need it. Also, utilization analytics, such as platforms, should integrate easily with external APIs, such as booking apps. And here you can see that a search function, which is circled to Fred. So this search function allows you not just to see available rooms, but also to choose different features or properties of the space, such as natural light or available technology in the room. They also show you rooms that you booked recently, so the system kind of also almost learns to support your collaboration needs. Another way to manage and control bookings is a little bit less high tech, but still very efficient, is to introduce penalties for repeated no-show with no cancellation. For example, repeated offenders will receive a notification from the booking app automatically after 2 or 3 no-show a month. For example, they can just be blocked and access to booking function until the basically next month. And my last example here is probably one of the most crucial areas using automated utilization data, and this is basically desk sharing ratios. So here, desk occupancy data are really indispensable because they can be a part of your foundation for evidence-based planning, also for your change management later on, for communication. Also, they can help inform dynamic occupancy models. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the webinar, the data are objective and they're indisputable. So they can help you take the politics out of your conversations for the key stakeholders in your organization, having the data and presenting them with a valid arguments about how this space is actually utilized, like the desks are only used 50% of the time, will help them understand why they need to give up space and make it much less frictionless and painless for everyone involved. Here I just wanted to very quickly show you a couple of techniques of basically using the utilization data to adjust sharing ratios. So the first method here involves average daily peak utilization, and this is one of the key metrics that we use at OpenSensors, as well as I think the rest of the industry or the large consulting firms do the same. And the first example, 2 departments in one company with a different headcount, but the same current sharing ratios, which is basically flat guideline probably across the whole organization. And the target utilization is 85%, which is again a flat target throughout. But let's say we've been measuring the space for 8 or 10 weeks, and we found out that department 1 has 70% average peak utilization, and second department is on 50%. Just to clarify, average peak utilization is an average of all peaks observed over a certain period of time. So how is it related to sharing ratio? Here we can use average peak utilization to change or to tweak the current sharing ratios, which will result in the first department sharing one desk between 1.5 people almost instead of 1.2. And the second department will be sharing one desk between 2 people which is also very reflective of the peak utilization patterns, because obviously this team, this department is much more mobile compared to the first one. So it doesn't really make sense for them to have the same sharing ratio because they have different working cooperation patterns. You would probably see, of course, the kind of effect of scale if when it comes to much larger departments or organizations, but the cost of the desk in cities like London is just incredibly expensive. So saving at least 100 desks or saving them up for new recruits or new headcount will help you make the space more flexible and more resilient, so you will be able to accommodate your growing headcount without really growing your footprint. And the second method here is a bit different, just different approach, which is basically profiling employees by their individual mobility profiles. So with the help of automated occupancy, we can actually drill down to the level of single desk at organization of any scale. And we can see who is anchored or like not very mobile, desk bound, who is semi-agile, spending about 50 to 80% of the working time at the desks and the rest of the time elsewhere, and who is agile. And nowadays, I think most of the knowledge workers, at least, will fall into this category here. People spending less than 50% actually physically present at the desks, and the rest elsewhere, meeting or collaborating or working from home or working from some third places. We don't really know, but what is important is that these guys can share up to one desk between two people. So by using this, we can actually combine these two methods. So for example, start with profiling departments and customizing their desk sharing ratios, and then digging deeper to like one level down to single desks level. And if it's a larger department, they obviously will be someone who will be desk bound, for example, like, I don't know, administrative staff or people who just tend to be, tend to stick to their desks because it suits them, or people who belong to maybe different generation and who have like different habits, which is okay. And there will be those who are agile and who will be moving around the office all day. To do a very quick wrap up. So first of all, do realize the value of the data. Second, have your questions ready. Just ask yourself and ask the data questions, how you're going to use it and what it is you want the dashboard, for example, to show you, and also who will be using that dashboard, like how many levels of seniority in your corporate real estate function or HR function or other company who you will decide to work with can customize the dashboard according to your preferences and the way the data can be viewed. Third step is start monitoring and start spotting the trends, identifying them, analyzing them, building your profiles by department, by allocation, by country, on like whatever ways it suits you. Use objective data to support your communication and your conversations. Basically plan the workplace change out and make sure that you build it on objective data. Actual rightsizing and optimization that will involve probably a bit of new fit out and redesign of some of the spaces, but will result in your space becoming more productive and just better fit for purpose and better supporting your business. And then after everything is done, just keep monitoring the space. Someone who is much smarter than me said attaining ideal desk sharing ratios is a moving target, which actually means that every organization, especially large ones, keep changing, and desk sharing ratios and teams and kind of stacking plans just keep changing. So it's really hard to keep up with that. But again, having the data to support every decision making at every step is absolutely vital. And and have fun, most importantly.
Thanks, Yulia. We've got some time for a couple of questions that have come through, and I think they're very valid ones that's worth sharing with the audience as well. So the first question is, once we've generated occupancy data, when do we start communicating the desired changes to our employees to get them on board?
Well, great question. We probably need to design another webinar just highlighting the importance of communication and again, how to incorporate the data into your internal employee communication. The answer is the earlier the better. Actually, I personally believe that communicating with employees it needs to be from the very beginning of the process, even before you install the sensors. Actually, we recommend designing the employee communication around explanation why the company is using the sensors and highlighting benefits of changing the office space or kind of designing or redesigning the space around the employees' ways of interacting with the space, around the patterns, just making it better for everyone and highlighting this kind of win-win situation, which also helps address some common concerns such as privacy concerns and security concerns. But take your employees on the journey with you, and from the very start, get their feedback, incorporate it into your workplace change plan to help your people adapt to the changes quicker. Evidence-based communication is really the key to overcoming any resistance.
Thank you. So our second question here is, what would you recommend monitoring to understand how the workplace impacts employee productivity?
Employee productivity comes up a lot in workplace change theory and practice. It's the single least quantifiable metric, and it's really difficult to pinpoint or to define it, let alone start to measure it. The very notion of work and productivity keeps changing, so it's not the same as it was at the time of production lines or industrial revolution. And nowadays it's a lot about teamwork and collaborative productivity, which is even harder to measure. To answer the question, or at least attempt to answer it, you have to holistically measure the impact of workspaces. A lot of research really suggests that there is a correlation between environmental conditions, employee well-being, which also lead up to productivity. For example, lower CO2 emissions or better air ventilation at workspaces with natural light also can improve productivity levels. Also, increase in CO2 levels negatively impact short-term memory, and this is like scientifically proven fact. For example, in our dashboard, we can capture both peak occupancy times or peak utilization times in the office space, and also peaks in CO2, and we can correlate these two, and usually we can immediately see the patterns, like the more people come in the office, the CO2 start to peak. And that's when and where, I guess, the productivity and kind of the general feel-good factor is going down.
Thanks, Yulia. Now that's all the time we have for questions. For the ones we weren't able to get to today, we'll come back to you personally and get those answered. On a final note, we're launching a new guide on how to achieve efficient workspace utilization with LoRa technology, done in partnership with Semtech. So as soon as we have that available, we'll let you know. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining us today, and also to Yulia for sharing her expertise. We hope you enjoyed the broadcast and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.